The City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for November the 28th, 2022. Would you please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Janice Hoppy.
Present on Zoom.
Valerie Nasser-Beck.
Present on Zoom too.
And Amanda Weaver.
I'm also here on Zoom.
Thank you. Judy Hutchinson.
Here.
Corey Stites.
Here.
Rachel Altine.
Present.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
And Leah Dozeman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, all 8 members of council are present, 3 virtually. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much, and thanks to our virtual counselors for joining us. And if it's a little bit hard for me maybe to see you, I see you well on my screen now. So if you have, if I'm not looking at you, raise your hand in the virtual space. Counselors, before you, we have the City Council minutes for November 14th, 2022. Are there any corrections to be noted, or seeing none, we'll let those stand approved with our thanks to the clerk. We have no proclamations and ceremonies tonight. We are now at our we're going to approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to be made in the agenda? None. Seeing none, it will stand approved. We will go to now to our public's right to speak. And the members of the public may come and speak on any matter that is not on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes under the public's right to speak. If you are online and would like to speak, please raise your hand in the virtual format and we will bring you into the meeting. I have no one signed up to speak here on my sign-up sheet. Is there anyone here in the hall or anyone online from the public who would like to speak tonight?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Is your opportunity? Okay, seeing none, we will close our public's right to speak. We will go now to our agenda item number 1. Councilor Ohm, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Council Bill number 20-2022, an ordinance amending sections 22-58 and 22-67 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to establish an exemption from the city's sales and use tax for carryout bag fees enacted by the state of Colorado. At issue, the Colorado State Legislature adopted a carryout bag fee effective January 1st, 2023, which by January 1st, 2024 prohibits all retailers, with a few specific exceptions, from providing single-use plastic bags. Carryout bag fees are currently subject to local sales tax. As a home rule city, Wheat Ridge is able to establish its own laws, including the ability to exempt from taxation certain goods and services. The attached ordinance enacts such an exemption for the city.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. It is not quasi-judicial. It is a public hearing, and I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do you have a staff presentation on this item?
We don't really. I'll add a few things, but Mark Colvin is here, our finance manager, if you have any questions for him. But this is fairly straightforward state law, and we have members of city staff that participate on the Colorado Municipal League committee that discusses issues such as this. CML does recommend that cities exempt the tax on this bag fee, and as far as we know, most cities in the metropolitan area are going to do the same.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to questions of council, I'll open this up to the public. If you are from the public and would like to speak on this, now is your opportunity. Please come forward or raise your hand in the virtual format. And I don't see anyone with their hands raised or coming forward, so we will go to questions from council of staff. And seeing none, Mr. Ohm, may I have a motion on this item? Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to close the public hearing. And Councilor Ohm, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 20-2022, an ordinance amending sections 22-58 and 22-67 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to establish an exemption from the city sales and use tax for bag fees enacted by the state of Colorado, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Counselor Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will go to agenda item number 2. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Resolution Number 42, 2022, a resolution adopting the city budget and appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado, for the 2023 budget year. At issue, Sections 107 and 109 of the Wheat Ridge City Charter require that a public hearing on the proposed budget be conducted before its final adoption, and that the budget be adopted by resolution on or before the final day, December 15th, 2022, established by state statute for the certification of the next year's tax levy to the county.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. It is not quasi-judicial. It is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A brief one. You heard a very detailed one. Was it just last Monday, I guess, wasn't it? So we'll keep it somewhat short, but we want to make sure that we give you the highlights in case any public didn't have a chance to hear it last week. So we'll go ahead and get started. Ali Sheck is online also, our administrative services director, and so we'll be here, staff will be here with any questions that you may have. So last Monday, the leadership team and I presented the 23 budget, proposed budget in detail. We discussed how this budget aligns with council priorities and resident feedback. That full presentation is available on the city's YouTube channel, and I encourage anyone who missed it to review the presentation. This evening, I will touch on the most important aspects of the 23 proposed budget. The 23 proposed budget cautiously projects an optimistic future for the city in the near term. Revenues are projected to continue to increase, but at a slower pace than in the most recent past. Commercial and residential development will remain strong in Wheat Ridge, but is likely to slow, which will decrease one-time revenues generated from construction activity. Inflation continues to remain high, increasing city costs for goods and labors. Some uncertainty does exist concerning the future of the economy. However, I believe Wheat Ridge has built a strong foundation and will continue to remain resilient against any future challenges. So to look at this year's budget, first of all, we expect to end 22 with the general fund in a better position than budgeted. You can see from this chart, once I change it, hopefully it works. We tested it. We did, we tested it. Oh, Lauren, I have it off. Sorry. I was preserving the battery. So as you can see here in this chart, we began the year with a higher fund balance than anticipated, 20 million instead of 17, and mostly due to some sales tax revenues that were 12% higher in 21 than we expected. We're projecting higher revenues than budgeted, 52 million instead of 48 million, and lower expenditures than budgeted, 49 million versus 51 million, which leaves us with an estimated unrestricted fund balance at the end of this year, 3.4 million higher than originally projected, which is 34% of our general fund expenditures. So that's all good news. Now turning to 23, the proposed budget, we're proposing a budget all in for all funds, and this chart shows all funds of 92.5 million, the general fund being the majority of that at 51%. Overall, this budget is about a 12.5% increase over this year's adopted budget, which is about 10 million. This is largely due to planned capital projects in our capital improvements fund, our renewal Wheat Ridge bond fund, open space and conservation trust fund. So it's exciting because that additional 10 million is going to accomplish a great deal for our community with public infrastructure projects. Focusing now just on the general fund, again, that 51% of that total budget. We are continuing to be cautiously optimistic about the city's revenue projections, and we continue to forecast somewhat conservatively. This budget includes modest projections for sales and use tax. The 23 revenue is projected to, total 23 general fund revenue is projected to decrease by almost 12% compared to what we're planning to see this year. This is due to one-time revenues that we're receiving in this year's budget in the general fund, including $3.9 million in ARPA funds, which we're not going to see again next year, over $500,000 in a rebate from the Broncos sale. We're not going, again, we won't see that next year. And then just overall projected reduction in development-related development-related revenues, including building permits and building use taxes that we project in '23. This year was very, very busy, and those revenues were significantly higher than in most years. Moving on, the projected, talking about revenue again for the general fund. Sales tax is our largest revenue source. You can see here it's over half, 58%, when you add in the use tax, which is very similar to sales tax. 69% of our revenues come from those two sources. We are projecting an increase of 4.5% in '23 in sales tax over this year's, which is a 9% increase over what we budgeted for this year's budget. Through October of this year, which includes sales through September, we get a sales tax a month later. Sales tax has increased 9% over the same period of last year. So, but we are projecting a little bit conservatively for '23, or for the end of this year at 5.5%. So right now we're almost at 9%, but we hope to stay at least 5.5% by the end of the year over last year's sales. General fund expenditures, we are proposing a total budget of $47.3 million and transferring from general fund reserves just over $5 million to several different funds. I'll talk about that in a second. Our unrestricted fund balance at the end of next year is projected to be 22%, which is about $10.5 million. But we also do have the Tabor required 3% emergency reserve, which is about $1.4 million. So essentially, we have 25% of reserves for additional spending if needed. You all remember that City Council does have a fund balance policy that does require a 17% minimum. General fund expenditures broken down by department. As you can see here, the police department, and this has been fairly steady. I think at least as long as I've been here, it's always been around 30% of our budget. It has stayed that way. Police department is primarily people, and it's the largest department, has the most staffing, and which accounts for 30% of the general fund budget. Parks and Rec is next at 15%, which does include the recreation center. And central charges is 12%. That includes a lot of our expenses that are across all city departments, including our workers' compensation insurance, property liability insurance, medical, dental, life insurance coverage, postage, utilities, janitorial, things like that. It's a pretty big number. Administrative services is our internal services with HR and finance, IT, purchasing, those types of departments. That's 12%. General government is you all, city council, city clerk, city manager's office, economic development, and our city attorney's office. That's at 9%. Public works, 11%. Community development, 8%. And municipal court, 3%. So as I mentioned earlier, we are proposing to transfer some money from the general fund reserves to several other funds. And the first fund is the equipment replacement fund. We're transferring $500,000. That is to continue saving for the city's a new enterprise resource planning system, which we've been talking to you about for quite some time. We're right in the middle of that. That's really our internal financial software package and there's many different modules, court module, HR module, different modules. It's really our internal structure. We have a very old archaic system right now, and we're excited to get something new. So we're transferring $500,000 to put aside, and even after the upgrade of our police department radios, which we did this year, there was funding in the equipment replacement fund for that. We will have over $744,000 saved for our new ERP system. So we don't know what that final cost is going to be yet, but we have a good amount of money set aside for that. So we're excited about that. Also transferring 1.7 million of our ARPA dollars, their restricted funds, to the Open Space Fund. And we'll talk about what projects that will fund here in a bit. And finally, $3 million to our Capital Improvement Fund. That's just an annual transfer we make to our capital CIP budget for capital projects on an annual basis. Just a few real high-level items that are included in the 23 budget that go to meet some of the city's priorities. We have about $935,000 in fleet replacement budgeted. That does include a new snowplow. As you heard last week, we are increasing our laneage in the city with some of our new projects on the west side and north side of town. So we want to make sure that we have the equipment needed to maintain those roads. We are planning to do a new updating our comprehensive plan. It's been over 10 years. And it's time to do that, so we have money in for that. And included with that will be an economic development study. We have some money in the budget for that. A new e-citation system for our police department, which will make it more efficient for them to operate in the streets and keep our officers on the street more often. Kind of some cool things for our publics, a GPS tracking system for our snowplows. Again, we talked about this last week. Residents can track our snowplows to see when they're going to be on their street. We're going to look at doing an update to our stormwater master plan and coming back to council with some recommendations on how to address some of our stormwater needs. New cyber initiatives to make sure that our systems are secure in case there is another attempt cyber attack on our system. And then new employees. We have 11 and a half new full-time employees. 5 of those are full-time lifeguards that we hope will help us bolster staffing in that area to reduce our pool closures that we've seen over the last year or two. And then moving on to some of the larger capital projects in our CIP budget, we have, it's a $26.6 million, $6 million budget, and the majority of that is for the Wadsworth improvement project, hopefully finishing phase 1 and potentially starting phase 2. $3 million for our annual preventative street maintenance, slurry seal and asphalt repair, concrete repair on our roads. $150,000 to keep our striping, bike lanes, and different crosswalks and center lane striping up to date. And as I mentioned on the last slide, $100,000 for a stormwater master plan update. Whoops. And a few more CIP projects. We have $1.5 million in for some bike and pedestrian improvements. And those include a missing sidewalk on Wadsworth, on the west side of Wadsworth from 32nd to 35th, which will connect with the new improvements on as part of the Wadsworth project. So 23 will do the environmental and design work for that. And then some bike and ped improvements on 35th Avenue between Teller and Sheridan that will connect with what the city and county of Denver is doing to provide some additional bike lanes and pedestrian improvements there. Our neighborhood traffic management program continues to be very popular. We have increased that budget over the last couple of years to $100,000. We'll be coming back to you this next year to look at that program to see if we can enhance that. $100,000 for a much-needed traffic signal master plan. We're, as I mentioned earlier, with the new developments across the city, we're new owners of new traffic signals, and we need a master plan for that. And then also ADA improvements across the city. We have an ADA transition plan, and we're beefing this budget up quite a bit also, $75,000 a year. That will accommodate not only ramp replacement, but also concrete grinding to correct uneven sidewalks and to eliminate other trip hazards. Oops. And a few more CIP projects. We have just over $329,000 included in the budget for some city hall improvements. Majority of this is for courtroom security enhancements. We have some $200,000 in for GIS updates and a city datum conversion. Lauren explained this last Monday. As she said, this is a less exciting and less visible project, but most surveyors use GPS field equipment, which relies on a specific coordinate system or datum. The national datum was updated in 2022, and in turn, we'll be completing an update of the city's datum and GIS to align with the national coordinate system, which is important. That will require some outside consultant help to do that. And then $25,000 to do a gateway signage program to look at our branding and wayfinding and welcoming signs into the city to see what we can do to enhance that. The Renewal Wheat Ridge issued bonds last year, I believe. Was it last year already? Yeah. And for several projects in the I-70 Kipling urban renewal area. We have $6.6 million that is budgeted in the Renewal Wheat Ridge Bond Fund. We're going to improve areas around 32nd and Youngfield with some bike and pedestrian facilities. And then the Youngfield corridor will see some enhancements with the new fencing and signage and landscaping and lighting to make that a more welcoming environment for the city's western gateway. We'll invest in the Wheat Ridge Recreation Center. The center is almost 25 years old now. It's still beautiful, but it needs some repairs, and it's very well used. So the bond fund is going to help with a new roof, replace a new roof, new heating units for the center, repairs to the bridge that goes over Lena Gulch, and a new parking lot. So we're very helpful, or that's going to be great ability to use some of those bond funds to make some improvements and maintain a quality asset in our community. And let's see, what else? Oh, and then also the bond fund has some funding in it for some improvements at the Wheat Ridge Ward Station area. We are finalizing the design for a pedestrian bridge over the tracks and a trail down to the frontage road. And some of the funding is going to be used for that. Now moving on to some parks and recreation special funds, specifically the Open Space Fund and Conservation Trust Fund. The Open Space Fund has a budget of $6.3 million, and that includes the $1.7 million in ARPA funds that I mentioned earlier that will be transferred from the general fund reserves. That will be used for Tabor Lake Trail improvements, Fruitdale Park Playground resurface, and Panorama Park tennis court replacement. Also included in the Open Space Fund is funds for the green on 38th Avenue, Clear Creek Trail improvements, and community garden expansion and ball field improvements. Conservation Trust Fund has a budget of $665,000. It includes quite a bit of improvements for our recreation center, and we are, as Karen mentioned last Monday, we're going to focus on maintaining a lot of our parks and rec assets instead of adding new things for a while to catch up on some deferred maintenance. So we're excited to be able to put almost $665,000 into some of those projects. Lap pool resurfacing, leisure pool resurfacing, treadmill replacements at the rec center, new pool chlorinator replacement. So again, some of those not very exciting items, but things that we still have to do to keep up with those assets. And as I mentioned again, we had some ARPA funding. Very excited to be able to use that for some community programming. We're projected to spend last year and this year about $1.5 million of our $7.9 million that we received, and the 2023 budget includes another $2.4 in spending. We have to spend our 7.9 by 2026, so we're working our way through that. The 23 budget will include funding for our homeless navigation program, food insecurities with some funding for community table, behavioral health care, some funding for Jefferson Center for community programs, and a clinician at the Wheat Ridge High School. Preventing and responding to violence, we have some money in there for to offset the telephone reporting unit in our police department, which will allow our police officers to stay out on the road more, and non-sworn individuals taking calls in-house. So we'll have, again, as I mentioned, we'll have a little bit more funding in '24 and '25 to spend, and we'll bring back a spending plan to you in the near future for that. And as always, we provide funding for some of our agency partners who do a lot of work in our community, specifically Local Works. Their '23 budget is $253,500, a significant decrease from last year. The Wheat Ridge Business District will continue to receive $90,000 on next year for their community, their business grant programs. And the Carnation Festival will receive $125,000 for our annual festival. And that is it. Mayor and council, we are here for any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Goff. A very nice presentation, and I think it should be noted that annually your group receives awards for your presentation on the budget. We appreciate that, and well done. Before I go to questions from council, I'd like to open it up to the public to speak on this item. If you would like to speak, you may come now to the podium. And if you are online, raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. And I don't see anyone here in council chambers wishing to speak, and I don't see anyone online, so we will close our public's right to speak on this and open it up to questions from council. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Patrick. That was a breakneck speed budget presentation, especially considering how much is in it. I believe this was in the memo, but I just want to confirm with the neighborhood traffic management program that we're carrying forward $25,000 from this year, as well as earmarking $25,000 for next year that will go specifically towards enhancing crossings and safety around our schools. And with council's recent interest in supporting the students that are going to be re-articulating with the school closures, that those funds would be eligible for those activities.
Yes, correct. Thank you for bringing that up. I failed to mention that. It is in the staff memo, but you are correct, and we're making that happen, and that might be a point of discussion at our special study session this evening.
Okay, great, thank you. And then this is just totally rhetorical, but it is worth asking. In the budget, I hear from constituents every now and then through email or dialogue about how much their property taxes are funding our city. And I know most of us in the room know this, but it's always worth bringing it up during budget season about how much of our budget comes through property taxes.
Yes, great question, great point. Our general fund revenues, property tax makes up about 3% of those total revenues. Our mill levy in Wheat Ridge is 1.830 mills, which is one of the lowest in the metro area. And, you know, I get it that most individuals don't understand it or don't see that, because when they get the property bill, it's fairly large. But you have to realize that there's many taxing districts on that property tax bill, the school district and the county being the largest. Wheat Ridge is a very, very small portion of that. We get about $50 to $60 per household per year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Before I close the public hearing and ask for motion, anything further from council? I'm going to close the public hearing, and Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen, may I have a motion on this item?
Hold just a second, my computer just went to sleep.
Okay.
All right. No, I think I got it. Thanks, Scott. All right. I would like to make a motion about this budget as soon as I get to it. All right. I move to approve resolution number 42, 2022, a resolution adopting the city budget and appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2023 budget year.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilor Ohm. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Sorry, you know, the budget's one of my favorite topics, and I always want to congratulate Ally on a great budget. I just want to call attention to a couple things in the budget that really stood out to me. One is just the ongoing accomplishments that we are getting done in our city that are coming from the tax revenue from our half cent. I know that we are up for discussion next year about what future options could look like if we're able to extend that. And I just am really proud of the work that we've done. Those types of significant investments in our community make a difference both for our residents and our businesses, even if they are nightmares for 18 months when Wadsworth is getting reconstructed. But it really makes a huge difference. And I also then just want to thank the city for being so responsive and jumping on that Wadsworth sidewalk segment from 32nd to 35th. The ad outs brought that forward as a priority this year, and through, great response from the city, not only being able to take the money that we'd asked to move from one project to another, but then getting the funding from DRCOG to really make it a great project and enhance the crossing at 32nd and Wadsworth. I just want to recognize the city for getting that done and getting it in the budget. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing, on the phone. Oh, Counselor Weaver, thank you. You are on mute.
Thank you. Well, since Councilor Hulteen gets to talk about her excitement about the budget, I just want to thank city staff for also bringing forward the datum money. And I just want to say, as someone who studies those things and teaches about them, it's a really important thing because it makes the difference on the few feet of mapping where we map property lines and things like that, and where snow plows shovel the streets. So thank you for being conscious of our GIS needs. And I know it seems like a lot of money on datums. However, it's super important. So thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion on the motion before we do go to a vote? And I don't see anybody online or in the hall, so would the clerk please poll the council? Okay, thank you very much. We will go to agenda item number 3. Councilor Weaver, would you please introduce this item?
I would be happy to. Item number 3 is Council Bill number 22-2022, an ordinance amending the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to permit composting under prescribed conditions. The issue is that the City of Wheat Ridge Municipal Code includes a definition of nuisance in section 15-25, which could be interpreted to prohibit composting. The purpose of this ordinance is to clarify existing language in the municipal code and allow composting.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. May I have a motion on this item, Councilor Weaver?
You may. I move to approve Council Bill number 22-2022, an ordinance amending the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to permit composting under prescribed conditions on first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, December 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m. as a virtual meeting in the city in city council chambers if allowed to meet in person on that date for COVID-19 restrictions, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen. Would the clerk please poll the council? Thank you very much. We will go now to agenda item number 4. Councilor Hoppe, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 43-2022, a resolution levying general property taxes for the year of 2022 to help defray the cost of government for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2023 budget year. At issue, this resolution authorizes the levying of property taxes for the 2022 fiscal year to help defray the cost of government in 2023.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this one?
Nothing to add to this, except that this is just a requirement. It has to be done by December 15th after the budget's adopted, submitted to the county. In order to change a mill levy in the city, we do have to go to the vote of the people. So you can't change it. But we are debruced, as they call it, from the Tabor revenue limit. So we don't have to do any refunds, as you may got a refund check from Jefferson County recently. But otherwise, this is just formality to set the annual mill levy.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, we'll open this to the public. If you would like to speak on this, come forward now, and we'll be happy to hear you on this item. And anyone online, I don't see anyone with their hands raised, so we'll close that. Public's right, and go to any questions from council before I ask for a motion. Okay, Councilor Hoppy, may I have a motion on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 43-2022, a resolution levying general property taxes for the year of 2022 to help defray the cost of government for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2023 budget year.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Councilor Stites. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now go to agenda item number 5. This is a motion to elect the mayor pro tem. At issue, each year, city council members elect by majority vote a mayor pro tem who serves until their successor is elected. The election is conducted according to Section 3B of the City Council Rules of Order and Procedure as follows. At the first or second regular meeting in November of each year, the council shall elect a mayor pro tem who shall serve until their successor is elected. The procedure shall be as follows. A, the chair will announce that the floor is open for nominations for the position of mayor pro tem. B, nominations will be taken from city council members by voice. No second is needed. C, each nominee will have the opportunity to address the council. And D, a motion and a second is then in order to elect one of the nominees to the position of mayor pro tem. If the motion is not carried, additional motions are in order until a mayor pro tem is elected by a majority of the council present. And we have all of our councilors present here today. So, let's see. I'm going to announce that the floor is open for nominations. And do I have nominations? Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be my honor to nominate City Council Member Corey Stites to be the next Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Wheat Ridge.
Are there any other nominations for the office? One more call for further nominations. Okay, the nominations are complete. Let's see. Would the nominee, Councilor Stites, would you like to address the council?
Well, I appreciate the nomination, and I accept that, and I appreciate, well, hopefully, my other councilors' support, and I look forward to serving that position the next year, and I will do my best. Ms. Hulteen and certainly Ms. Hoppy have left some big shoes to fill over the last couple of years, so I will do my best to make sure that I live up to those standards.
Okay. Let's see. We have a motion. Let me have a motion then to.
I move to nominate City Council Member Corey Stites to be the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Wheat Ridge.
Do I hear a
Second.
We have a second, and who is the second?
Councilwoman Hoppy.
Hoppy. Okay.
And if I
Will the
could
clerk
clarify,
please poll the council?
the motion's actually you move to elect rather than nominate, right?
This is the motion to elect.
Yep,
Yeah,
sorry.
I heard her
I'm
say
sorry.
nominate. I assumed
Yep.
she meant to say
Yeah,
elect.
sorry.
Right.
I amend my motion to elect Corey Stites
Thank
for
you.
Mayor
The
Pro
minutes will
Tem.
so reflect.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dahl, do I vote on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Stites has been elected Mayor Pro Tem.
Congratulations, Councilman. Mayor Pro Tem-elect Stites. It's a whole mouthful, so, okay. Thank you. I think that completes agenda item number 5, which was the last business item on our agenda. So let me get back to the agenda. And I think our next order of business is city manager's matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick things. just as a reminder for council and our public, the eastbound, I-70 eastbound on-ramp at Wadsworth will be closed starting, I believe, the 30th still. Does that sound right? I should have checked that before I sat down. I think it was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, but it snowed, so it's going to snow again here tonight, tomorrow, so hopefully they don't postpone it again. But our contractor decided it'd be much easier to close it completely instead of trying to work around traffic to get it done. So just keep in mind there are some detours on the city's website that we recommend to get around that. So keep an eye on that. And thank you, council, all for responding to potential dates for a retreat. It looks like the January 20th, 21st is the date that works for everybody. So we'll be getting some additional information out about agenda and what that looks like. So less than a month away here. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney's Matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go into elected officials matters, and let me start with Councilor Nosler-Beck.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to start by congratulating Councilor Stites as our new mayor pro tem, and really want to thank Councilor Hulteen for all of her incredible work and leadership over the past year. It takes so much work, and she's just been such an incredible resource for me when I've had to try and figure out how things were working, and I just am so grateful for the time and commitment that you've made to all of us on council and to our city. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I also wanted to just let folks know that there's some opportunities coming up with a lot of the schools with the closures that are happening. For example, on December 1st, Wilmer Davis is going to have an open house at Stevens Elementary School. So opportunities for the families to see some of the schools you'll be transferring into. Really great opportunity for the community to also join into those, because I know the community was really involved in the process before. And also with that, I've just been seeing on Facebook today a lot of opportunities in partnership with some service organizations to donate gifts and engage with the elementary schools. For example, Wilmer Davis is doing buy a gift for your child and buy an extra for a student at the school. So check those out. It's a great opportunity to give a little extra if you can this season. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Weaver. You are on mute. There you are.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hoppe.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Councilman Stites. And I am very happy to see the early birds that are out there with their Christmas decorations. I mean, it looks like it's already Christmas out there. And already the snow plow drivers have been out a couple times down the road when we've had some snow before. And I just love those guys, or whoever is driving the plows. But it's great. I'm glad we have the snow plows. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am looking forward to seeing everybody at the tree lighting ceremony this weekend, Saturday, December 3rd. It starts pretty early, 3 p.m. And several businesses are participating, as well as us lighting our big tree on 38th Avenue. So join us at the green, and I look forward to going along all of the businesses that are participating, and I wanted to give a special shout out to All Seasons Holiday Market. I was able to stop by there for Small Business Saturday. They were having a sale, and was able to pick up a bunch of stocking stuffers and gifts for the family, and really appreciate their support in the community. And they'll be having a bit of a market for the tree lighting ceremony. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Ms. Nosler-Beck hit a lot of my points regarding the schools. I know if you visit both Color Strand and Wilmore Davis's Facebook page, they have links and stuff for people to be able to donate and or see what people need for those gifts. Along with what she said as far as Wilmore Davis and Stevens having their meeting, Color Strand and Prospect Valley is having an open house 6 to 7 on Thursday this week. So people are invited down to Prospect Valley to it will be the old school, not the new school yet. The new school should be open in January, which is pretty exciting. I know we'll have a ribbon cutting for that. A couple weeks ago, I was able to join the city manager and Councilwoman Hutchinson and Councilor Ohm at the end of the year local works meeting. I was pretty excited. Personal Achievement Martial Arts was nominated as Philanthropic Business of the Year. We lost to Clancy's, but congratulations to Jeff and at Clancy's. They do a phenomenal business over there. I again want to thank all the councilors for their support in being Mayor Pro Tem this year. I look forward to the challenges and working with Mr. Goff to help set the agendas a little bit. And I do want to thank Councilwoman Hulteen. She's done a phenomenal job this year, and like I said, set some big shoes to fill. And along with shopping local, if you can find your gifts here in Wheat Ridge, find them and buy them here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ohm.
I just want to thank my neighbors for also getting all their Christmas lights up. I've been trying my best to get mine up, and before the snow hits tomorrow. And then I also went out to Esther's with my family this weekend over by Gold's there. That's a nice little establishment, so if anybody hasn't tried that, I would encourage them to stop by and support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen.
Well, I'm not the Mayor Pro Tem anymore.
All good things come to an
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to congratulate Councilmember Stites. You'll do a wonderful job. We're really fortunate to I'm looking forward to the next year working with you. And I do not have big shoes. I wear a size 6.5. They're relatively small, but I do have a big mouth. So, but it's fun work, and this is a really great council to work with. And we're really fortunate to be serving at this point in time with such competent city staff and such I think, good peers to work with. So we serve our city well, and I'm looking forward to the year ahead, especially all those dollars that we just approved to get spent. It's been brought up already a couple times, but the schools are doing holiday stores. I am volunteering at Wilmore Davis, and when I was talking to the coordinator, they mentioned specifically on December 16th, they have nobody registered to volunteer. And so I promised that I would lovingly harass people to sign up to volunteer for a shift. And this is to work their holiday store. So it's just a couple hour shift, and it's a lot of fun. And they have shifts from 9 to 11, 1 to 3, and 4 to 6. Grab a buddy and volunteer at Wilmore Davis. It's appreciated and really helps our city. And I just want to tell a quick endearing story from my holiday travels last week. I was in Kansas City at a coffee shop and sat down, and because I was traveling by myself, of course, I'd start chatting up whoever's next to me, and it was this nice couple, and I asked if they were from around there, and they're like, no, we're visiting from Denver, and I was like, oh, I'm from Denver too, and then we like quickly established neither of us are actually from Denver, they're from Aurora, and I'm like, oh, I'm from Wheat Ridge, and they're like, oh, we actually just moved to Aurora, and the first thing we did, the first dollar we spent, they literally said this, first dollar we spent was at Wheat Ridge Cyclery, and then we went and had lunch at, and they couldn't remember the name, Colorado Plus, and they were like, we kind of wish we'd moved to the west side. Anyway, they were charming, and we're just delighted that they knew Wheat Ridge, and it's just great that our city shines that close to the Mississippi. So,
Well, thank you, and glad you got home safely. before the snow flies. So, and I want to personally thank you for a great job as Mayor Pro Tem. You've been right on top of the schedule and all the things that are happening, and the program ran very smoothly. And while there may not be large shoes to fill, they are swift shoes. So she's done a great job, and I want to welcome the new Mayor Pro Tem Stites into the position, and I look forward to working with you on that. We've got several nice things coming up. On December 3rd, people have mentioned it, we got the holiday celebration out on the green on 38, and starts from 3 o'clock, and I think at 6 or 6:30, we're lighting the tree. So there'll be great entertainment for the whole family all along there. We've got, I'm having a second Saturday as Coffee with the Mayor at Vinola's Italian Restaurant, Saturday the 10th at 9 o'clock. If you would love to have you come down and talk with us and have a cup of coffee. We've got apparently snow scheduled to come into our neighborhood, and so while it's always great to see that, please be careful as you walk and drive around, shovel your walks and the areas that you can, and help your neighbors out with that, and always drive carefully and safely around our streets. We'll be back here in a study session a week from tonight, correct, Mr. Goff? I don't have my calendar with me, but
We will be.
I think we'll be here
Talking about affordable housing.
talking about affordable housing. So
Yes.
I hope you'll join us a week from tonight. If there's no further business to come before the council, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Open the, sorry. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, we have a special study session tonight. So, does anyone need a break either here or online? Okay. Why don't we just? You're going to grab some water? Okay. I'll tell you what, let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll start on our study session. I'm going to get some too. And Ready? I'd like to call to order the special study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for November 28th, 2022. We have one action item. Item number one is Wheat Ridge Elementary School closures, a discussion on that and what may ensue. We have not taken public comment on the study session heretofore, so we will invite any members of the public who would like to speak to the podium now or raise your hand on the virtual format, and we'll bring you into the meeting to provide us comment on this agenda item. I don't have anyone signed up. No one's coming forward, so we will go now to Mr. Goff for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff drafted a somewhat high-level memo on kind of what we know today, but this was a request by council to bring back a study session item to start having a conversation about the potential reuse of the school closures. So Lauren, as she's always does, worked very quickly and put together kind of a summary of the two schools that are physically located in Wheat Ridge that are closing. She put together some information about the zoning and kind of really it, mainly the zoning. But then also Karen O'Donnell, our Parks and Rec director, put together a quick information about some joint use agreements that we currently have with these two schools, because that will impact potentially some future programming and cooperation that we have with the school districts. So I think with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to open it up to the council members that asked to bring this forward and have them introduce what they would like to talk about.
Okay, very good. Councilor Stites, who's going to go first? Councilor Ohm?
Yeah, I think the issues, I'm glad that staff brought this up. Some of the issues that I'm trying to think ahead, and it's really critical that we're having this conversation now and doing some of this homework. It was very enlightening that, to see kind of, what the current zoning is and kind of what we can or cannot do. I definitely have some concerns over what the possible could be, and how much, I guess, control that we would have as a city of the type of use down the road. I know it's going to be hard to kind of navigate, I guess, because it is a school, it's owned by the state, and they have certain rights.
Have we had any indication sort of from the school district? I mean, nothing really in solid information on what they're...
Nothing yet, but they have, as they have since the beginning of this, they've promised to implement or facilitate a separate process to talk about the potential reuse of the schools. And they don't have any specific dates yet, but I did have lunch with the superintendent last week, and they are going to be moving forward with that process. But again, no specific dates yet, but they're hoping that will start in January, and they want to really meet with each community and each neighborhood around those schools and have specific outreach meetings with those neighborhoods, because obviously whatever happens in those schools will impact those neighborhoods. So there is some language in your memo that we pulled off the Jefferson County School website that does talk about this potential process that they're going to undertake. And, they're looking at various purposes, including but not limited to family resource centers, newly developed workforce housing, city-managed recreation centers, program space for nonprofits or childcare providers. So that's kind of what they've thrown out right now. But again, they really want to hear from the community. You know, I've been told that they're going to maintain ownership of some of the schools. They may sell some of them. I know I think they've got appraisals on all the buildings, so they have that information. They're planning to hire an additional facilitator. They're putting out an RFQ process right now to bring somebody on to help with this process. So they're working through that. So again, that's about all the information we have from the schools. They're going to have a process. It should start in January, and that's about all we have from them right now.
Okay. And Counselor Stites, you mentioned that there was a public meeting at one or both of the schools that was coming up. Can you give us more information on that?
The both schools that are in the two of the schools that are in the Wheatridge articulation area that are combining Wilmore Davis and Stevens. I think Ms. Nosserbeck mentioned that there's a meeting coming up for those two schools to get together. Same with Color Strand and Prospect Valley, which will be this Thursday at 6 o'clock. So those will be kind of a good opportunity for those students that are at the closing school to go and see the facilities, meet some of the teachers and the principals at the new schools now that the decision's being made. Back in September when they first had these meetings, they tried to do that, but it was very rocky and did not go well. So that's kind of where that process is at now. So now now that the decision's made, the schools that are closing and coming together, they're going to start doing events and things like that, hopefully together to kind of build some camaraderie between the two schools.
Okay, so this is sort of like back to school night.
Yeah, so I think there's food
Framework
and it's
and
just kind of
that sort of thing.
there'll be a short presentation and they'll go over how different things go. That'll be a little bit easier at Stevens, obviously, because Stevens is a built-out building, whereas at Prospect Valley, it's going to look at a building that won't be there 6 months from now. So while I'm talking, Karen, and thank you for putting that together. As far as like the new playground at Color Strand, and maybe it's in here and I just missed it, what's the process with that? I know we help pay for it as a city, and is it required to be there for a certain amount of time, or can they go in and bulldoze it tomorrow, or how's that work?
It is required, I believe, to be there for the life of the playground, which is listed at 20 years. So we're partway into year one.
Okay.
And they are responsible, the school district is responsible for maintaining it.
Interesting. Okay.
So those obviously have to be some of those discussions that we have. It's going to be unique to every school. And, you know, it's great Karen outlined this now so that we will be prepared to have this discussion. I'm going to make sure that they're well aware of this before they even start planning their meetings. So we'll get this information to them also.
Was there, I know some schools have like an easement, like an education easement, like the property has to be, was there?
There's one, it's in Westminster. So they're working through that. They're trying to figure out, I think, what they're going to do. Yeah, there's the city deeded the property for that school, and as part of the deed, it had to be used for educational purposes.
Got it.
So they could use maybe some other type of educational process in the school.
But neither Color Strand or Wilmore
No,
Davis have that. So
that's not my understanding. It's just the one.
potentially Wilmore Davis could be sold and turned into housing or whatever.
Potentially, I believe, unless there's something out there that we don't know. Yeah.
I know some members of the Davis family that sold that for $10 to the school district
Yeah.
a number of years ago, and they're fairly
Oh.
upset about this.
Mm.
But well, we all know one of them. But
Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you. This is actually a question that's kind of an extension of this conversation. So can Lauren or Patrick, can you clarify, so if the school retains ownership of, we'll just say Wilmore Davis, since it's in my district, is there any restriction on what they can do with it? Like, because it's a little confusing, right? Because they're not subjected to the zoning. So if they decide to retain it and like, can they redevelop it and kind of do what they want? Or would they actually have to go through a rezoning process if they wanted to change the use on it? Or is it only if it changes ownership that then it's subjected to its existing zoning or rezoning?
Yeah, good question, and that's a good segue. Mr. Dahl was prepared to kind of give that overall and discussion to respond to Councilmember Ohm's question about the zoning and restrictions. So turn over to Mr. Dahl.
Terrific. I'm glad you both raised that issue. And you're right to be concerned, but there really are limits. School districts in Colorado benefit from a statute that really gives rise to your question, and that statute says that school districts can ignore local zoning and local building codes for the purpose of citing a school building or school sponsored activity that has to be, an educational operation of the school district. And when they're building that school building, they don't have to comply with the local building code, and instead they have their own building inspectors. And so that's the extent, though, of their preemption, if you like, that lets them do that. When they are doing something else besides school, resident, housing, workforce housing, any of those other kinds of things, they're just a property owner. And like any other property owner, they have to come through full review. And if the zoning doesn't allow that, they're going to have to rezone. If they build something, they're going to have to go through the building code. If it's site development, it's site development review. So they're just another property owner. When they're doing school facilities, there is also the arena in which, beyond just the citing of the fact we're going to have a school there and here's the building, that's really the extent of the preemption. And so we've actually, I think even here in Wheat Ridge, had the experience and the opportunity of leaning on the school district to have them go through our local review for things like traffic, curb cuts off of streets the city owns. The statute doesn't relate to that. It says the citing of school buildings, basically zoning. And the school districts across Colorado are not above, they're not beyond asserting that statute lets them ignore, requirements like outdoor lighting kinds of issues on athletic fields, noise complaints on, band practicing, that kind of thing. And the business about the streets, other utility connections and things like that. But in my mind, it's pretty clear that their exclusion really is school buildings, the citing of school buildings, and their construction. So that leaves a fair amount of room for city regulation. A little bit of a gray area as they enter into some kind of agreement with another educational institution for some educational use of the building. I think they probably have a better argument there. So school buildings, it's still a school. But those are the things the city can't regulate. But as I said, that's limited, and the school district knows that. And occasionally we've had to remind them of the limits on the preemption authority that they have. Yeah, they're well aware, I'm sure, and will not be surprised when the city says, well, our zoning applies. If you're going to do anything besides a school, you need to come see us. So there's that.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Councilor Stites.
Just for example, how much say or how much sway has the city had with the building of the new Prospect Valley building? Almost none.
Good question. I was going to actually turn to Lauren and speak to that because, no, that's a great example, and we do have some input on that.
Yeah, it's limited. So they notified us just sort of by letter when they intended to draw up plans for the expansion. And then they did submit to us, which has been a longstanding agreement, sort of informal agreement, that they submit the traffic studies to us. So we saw a traffic analysis because they did modify the circulation pattern on property pickup drop-off. And then they more recently, when they started to discuss consolidation, said they were going to amend the traffic study to present to us again. So I'm not sure if we've gotten that amended traffic study, but that is the bulk of what our review has focused on, is that traffic analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have you don't think we have an updated traffic analysis for PV?
I know they intend to give us one based on the assumption of consolidating and having the additional students in there. They let us know that, but I'm not sure if the engineering division has that yet or not.
Okay. Because we received an email from the principal about a month or so ago, very, very, very concerned that somebody's going to die on the way to or from school, basically on 32nd or Parfait or one of those, Pearson. So, and, you know, really, most of that traffic, we're not gonna be able to do much about because it's on 32nd. So is there, because the traffic management, our neighborhood traffic management program doesn't really extend to 32nd because it's a thoroughfare, right?
That's correct. There's a couple considerations. So when we got the original traffic study, our engineering division got in touch with Lakewood because 32nd is the dividing line, so we wanted to understand the dynamics on both sides. We got in touch with Lakewood again to let them know another study is coming with updated numbers. And then Maria DeAndrea, our Public Works Director, and I were just talking this morning. There is a process that we are starting to, and we'll do sort of outside of the NTMP to understand what is our traffic control, where are signals, where are stop signs, where are crosswalks, where are sidewalks, and certainly for pedestrian routes, try to identify where we can make the improvements that were, we had budgeted earmarks from last week's discussion. Where can we make improvements, and where can we sort of broadcast to the public what are the safest routes, or what are the routes that we're making improvements to? So you're right that the NTMP as it's currently designed is pretty constrained, but we are already discussing how we can be more proactive, particularly for these two school impacts. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess I would have the same issue with Stevens, given that
Yes.
those kids are not gonna have to cross Wadsworth
Yes.
and walk down 38th or 44th, right? So
Yes.
that's gonna be a mess.
Thank you. Counselor Nosler-Beck.
Thanks. So I'll just kind of back to the usage of the properties. In some of the conversations that I had with the school district through the closure process, it was made clear to me that there's like 5 uses that you can use that in that, you were talking about this, Jerry, about the statute, and there's these 5 uses, and I would like it if the city, when we were talking to the school district about those community engagement meetings and things like that, that's at the forefront of the conversation so that the community engagement isn't led astray, where we start to have conversations about what could be there and kind of get our hopes up if it doesn't fall into those 5 usage pieces of the schools. I'm just a little wary of going out to the neighborhoods and getting the input, and then it not fitting into what the neighborhood wants, even when they've invested their time and stuff. And I don't want to not do the community engagement. That's not what I'm getting at. I just really want it to be clear and upfront at the very beginning. And so I don't know if that's, Patrick, when you're having conversations with the district about that, or I can elevate that, but just a concern.
Well, I think it really depends on it depends on what they hear from what I've been hearing. It depends on what they hear from the community. They haven't decided which schools they're potentially going to keep and which ones they're going to sell. So if they sell to a different user, it could be used for many other options, if I'm understanding your point correctly.
Yeah, but there's like 5 uses that it has to be for. So like one could be that it's sold to another charter school, or it could be sold to another entity that fits and and that might be what the neighborhood gives feedback on, but I just want that we're within the scope of what's out there, because it was a lot of what the conversation was about when I was talking to some of the school board members.
Mr. Dahl?
In response to your point, council member, the school district may well be saying these are the 5 school uses that we believe that we can continue to make of these properties, and that's fine, and those would benefit from this exemption that I'm talking about. But as was pointed out, that's just the 5 uses they could make and still take advantage of their immunity from city zoning. But of course, as pointed by by the mayor and Mr. Goff, they don't have to choose to continue to use it for a school use, and they can lease or sell to someone else who then has the ability to apply for any use that's allowed in that zone district or to apply for rezoning to something else. What I think is maybe the main point you're making is the school district's messaging, I guess, needs to be clear about what the potential use of the properties would be if the school retained them and what the potential use of the property would be if they disposed of them. If they retain them for school purposes, then that's limited, and that's great, and the neighborhood probably would appreciate hearing that. But
That's exactly what I was getting at, Jerry.
Yeah.
I have cold medicine brain, so thanks
Okay.
for saying that
yeah,
the way I meant it.
I think it's very important the school district, your point is the school district shouldn't be messaging these are the 5 things, and the neighborhood believes that that's the total exposure of things that could happen, because that's not true. And the school board in the end would make the decision to sell, lease. They could lease it for a school purpose, they could lease it for a non-school purpose. And in that context, as I mentioned the earlier question, they're another landowner. If they want to lease it for a non-school purpose, that's got to be subject to the city's zoning.
So to follow up on that, though, if they were to, they could lease it for any under use by right, any of the uses in the zone that it currently exists.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
if you look at the list of things they can do, produce stands and that sort of thing, all of those would not require a public process for them to do that.
Other than potentially site development, for reworking the site. but
The review,
Yeah,
the normal review in an R whatever, R1 or R2, I guess, in this, whatever that normal review would be.
that's exactly right.
Thank you.
But just to be clear, if I may,
Yes.
if you're referring, Counselor Nassler, back to the 5 bullet points that the school district put out, that does not align perfectly with our residential zoning. So they, for example, included workforce housing, which is usually a multifamily product, and that is not a permitted use in R1 and R2. So I agree with you that we want to make sure that whatever message or hopes the school district is conveying is in alignment with our zoning to the extent the zoning will have to apply, because it may not be an educational use. Likewise, daycare centers, privately operated daycare centers are not a permitted use in a residential zone district. Now, we could change the zoning code if we wanted to say any property over 6 acres could be permitted to be a daycare center, or we could talk about a zone change. But yes, managing community expectations in terms of what the school district wants to do and what the zoning would or would not allow is going to be paramount in my mind.
Thank you. Counselor Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more question, for now at least. Do we have any recourse if they decide just to sit on the property and let it blight, kind of like they did with Martinson for years and years and years and years?
Not really. The 2 angles I can think of, sorry, Mr. Mayor. The two angles I can think of are certainly nuisance and the other kinds of ordinances we have. Again, their state preemption statute doesn't protect them from the kind of operational issues we have with any property owner, number one. Number two, there is potentially some room under these joint use agreements that exist, because those are agreements that are really separate from their statutory exemptions, and those are continuing agreements, especially the one on Collar Strand for the playground. I think that does give the city an angle and perhaps some leverage to work through with them. Their goal is probably not to necessarily maintain a playground, and now they're stuck in an agreement for the next 19 years that makes them maintain a playground. The city might be willing to look at that agreement if other arrangements on the property were built into it. I think that's some recourse we might have.
Counselor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. We're talking about a lot of schools that are going to close. I have a granddaughter who attended Allendale in Arvada. It has been vacant for 2.5 years. They're keeping up the property. They've got the sign up that says, "Thank you for 30 great years." And, it's just vacant, all right? These are a lot of properties. So There's also talk, I've heard, that about possibly closing junior highs or high schools, things like that. I look at Prospect Valley. It's being built as a two-story. What other elementary schools are 2 stories except Stevens? But Stevens was Wheat Ridge Junior High. And then it became Stevens when it got moved from Reed Street. What's the plan there? I really think that the school board needs to work on developing some trust, because this is a lot of schools that are going to be closed, and they're closing them. Why? They didn't have money. But then you're talking about construction or other kinds of things. Where's the money going to come from? They don't have money to run the school, but they have money to redo the schools. I mean, that's, that doesn't even make sense. So that's a lot of empty schools around, and these are in the middle of neighborhoods. And, they need to be honest, because, the people aren't naive. So when they're asked questions, they should already look ahead to have answers, and it's going to be a big problem. 2.5 years for that one vacant school is a long time. So then you add, 16 more. That's a lot.
Counselor Ohm and then Counselor Dozman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is all speculation, but so my question is I got a couple questions. One is, in theory, could the school district build a, let's say, a community college on this site, because it'd be educational, so we could check that box. If they did so, in the R2, would the bulk plane apply? In other words, how close could that building be? How tall could that building be in this R2?
I can take that.
Yeah,
So
why don't
in
you
the
go? Thank you.
residential development standards table, the very bottom row, which we very rarely use, says all other uses, and 35 feet is still the maximum height for those other uses in the residential zone district.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one person ask me a little bit ago, what about the possibility of one of these schools becoming a library for the city? Is that a possible reuse? Without constructing anything new, but just adaptive reuse, is that possible?
From a zoning standpoint, it'd fall under that governmental category, so it'd be a permitted use.
Okay.
And then but I don't know what the library district's plans or needs are specifically.
And then what about culinary school?
Vocational schools, we tend to classify differently often as a special use. So it may depend on sort of who it's operating under, whether it's privately operated. Like private schools are actually not permitted in all zone districts. Those are a special use too.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Dozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as some of my colleagues have mentioned, and after listening to many of the statements by the school board members, I'm concerned about blighted, vacant buildings, of course, what other uses they are considering, and then the potential closures of middle schools and high schools that we're looking at. And so some of the conversations that we've been having this evening have just kind of got my gears grinding and wheels turning and wondering about, and with that lack of trust, wondering about the green and investing millions of dollars into that project. From our conversations, my understanding is that since it's our project and we're providing a majority of the money, then that's within our jurisdiction and we're going to have a lot more say than the school district would in that situation. And then if we entered the IGA, would it be similar to Color Strands Playground, where if they were to either close that school in the future or change it to a middle school or a high school through a consolidation process, like what that would look like? Would we still have that agreement in place following that?
Yeah, speaking specifically about the green, we currently have a draft for a 50-year lease for that property. So if the school closed, we would still have whatever the green for 50 years. Yep.
Counselor Hulteen?
Thank you. Two things. One, to carry forward with the green, is it an option to have like a first right of refusals should they ever decide to sell that property?
Good. You could always throw that in a contract, yeah. We
Yeah,
could- we
I
could
think
try.
that would, if we're making that investment and seeing if we lose Stevens, I don't know if we'd have any kids left in the community, but I think, given this conversation, since we are talking about another significant asset investment, I think a first right, should they decide to sell it, would be prudent.
Yeah, no, we'll throw that in there. We're still going back and forth. Maybe if I could, Mayor, speak about, I think the school district is talking about the next round of potential discussions of school closures. I don't think they can promise anything, but what I've been hearing is Wheat Ridge has one middle school and one high school, and the likelihood of those closing is pretty slim. So, I can't promise that. They probably can't promise that either, but they're not going to close a high school. I don't think the only high school. But who knows? I mean, I know there's a lot of mistrust with the school district, but I know that's out there. I think that's scaring a lot of people, and I'm not sure if that's going to ever happen. But from what I'm hearing, anyway, that's not going to happen. But nobody can promise that, of course.
So then my second question, so I feel like this has been really helpful discussion because, this has been a lot of things happening somewhat quickly for our community, and there's a lot of misinformation and confusion, and aspects of this conversation are going to be coming back to the dais, I'm guessing again and again. But there was some urgency to bring this forward quickly since the district starting its outreach conversations, and again, no one really knows what those are structured. Is there any opportunity or anything that's been identified that would be prudent for us as a city is a need we have, where we could proactively let the district know that either we'd be interested in leasing the school, or this is something that's been identified through a planning process, whether it's Let's Talk or comp plan or something else, where we've identified a need in our community that we'd like to see those properties used for? I guess I'm asking if we can advocate for something that we know we'd like, so that we are less susceptible to their whim, which we probably are anyway. But and I say that my kind of last qualification here is, I'm wildly optimistic by nature, and there is maybe to some extent a benefit to having a repurposed school that could get retrofitted back into a school at some point. Should our numbers, make the case for that, and of course, building new schools is good, but to recite them on existing school properties would make sense. So that's a complicated question, but so can we advocate for a use that would serve us to make sure that this process is benefiting our community, and yeah, I guess that's really the question. Thank you.
Sure.
Did you keep up with that?
Yeah, I caught it. I stayed over. Thank you. And that's happening in other communities. They're having discussions about specific uses. I think we need to identify what we want. And do you want to have that community process also with the neighborhoods, which the school district is planning to do? I'd hate, are we gonna go down our own road on this, or are we gonna try to work with the school district? I think it could cause some complications if we don't try to work with the school district in some format. They own the properties, right? So, if you guys have ideas about potential use, I suggest we start having those discussions, or we coordinate with the school district on their community meetings, and saying, hey, this maybe we present at those meetings. This is what the city's looking at, has an idea.
Well, I guess I was kind of pushing the question. Let's just play ping pong here for a second. I was kind of asking you guys, when you identified leasing the building over off of 45th and Wadsworth because you had facility needs, do we have needs that we've already identified, whether they're facility needs or community amenity needs, that we have somewhere already identified that we could be looking at? Is this a match that would make sense for us to advocate for?
The one thing that comes to mind, so we did recently kick off the first week of the outage, so whenever that was, first week of September, the city's first facilities master plan. So, we hired a consultant, Stantec, to do that work. They've interviewed all departments and toured all city facilities, so we don't yet have their summary of their current recommendations or needs, but the timing is really good to better understand that. We use a Parks master plan to dictate sort of more the open space that we need, but the facilities master plan focuses on the vertical building structures and sort of parking lots and storage that we'd have as a city. So I don't know, I haven't been involved in enough of those conversations, and Maria's leading that project, but she and I talked about that last week too, about trying to get some preliminary glance at that so we can talk to the school district before they maybe talk to too many other people.
Well, and maybe as an example too, to look at from our past, when Martinson closed back in 2012, I believe, we did have a process where we looked at potentially buying the property for a satellite rec center on the east part of town. And we went pretty far down that route, and in the end just decided not to. I think we were actually, as part of that, looking at moving or not building the Hopper Hollow, right, Park, is that what's called, off of 44th, in its current location, and maybe moving that to Martinson and opening that as a satellite rec center. That fell through for different reasons, but that was kind of one example of the city being a little more proactive. Again, it was I think one school closing at that time, so there wasn't this huge process by the school district to try to find a use. I think it took 5 years for them to backfill that with the current use.
So two things that come to mind just kind of as we're talking. One is just a little bit to my heart, but there's a lot of movement in our community around like a art center. And I know we've got the maker space that's kind of a quasi art center, but that comes up. And in the memo, there was some numbers in there about the field usage at Colorstrand for accommodating our growing youth sports program. And if we want to grow our schools, growing our sports is really helpful. So I just want to bring to the forefront that there are amenities that the schools offer that align with some of the things that we've identified as a city we like, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask for it. And maybe they'll lease it to us for $10 a year to make good on some history.
Mr. Goff, do you mentioned that they were bringing someone onto their staff in order to be a liaison or a point person. So how do you anticipate that we might play a meaningful role in engaging with them?
Well, I think they're hiring, they're doing an RFQ or RFP process to bring on a firm or individual to help with this community outreach process.
Okay.
Then also I think they're doing a separate process for, I don't know if it was an architect or something similar, development, land use type person also. And my understanding is those folks or groups will be facilitating and running these community meetings. So beyond that, they haven't reached out to us directly to talk about how they're gonna interact with us.
Is there a way that we should sort of, somewhat in the vein of what Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen said, reach out to them with an offer or an interest in being sure that we are engaged in the process along a a lot of levels.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's
So-
obviously going to happen. And
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
as I mentioned, I had lunch with the superintendent last week,
Yeah.
and all the city managers are engaged with the school
Okay.
district at the
Okay.
management level at this point. Again, we just don't know enough about what their process is going to be yet,
Yeah.
and how and when we can get involved. They haven't laid that out yet, but we're staying in very close contact with them to make sure that
Okay.
we're part of it.
And this is obviously going to take them a little time,
Yeah.
It's not a first quarter 2023
No.
process. It's going to take a while. Councilor Hutchinson.
How many charter schools do we have in Wheat Ridge?
Probably people on the dais may know better than I am. We have Mountain Phoenix that consider a charter. Compass. We have Alpine. Is that a charter school? Does anybody else know on? Yeah, I think that's probably it. There's two or
Who
three.
owns them?
Well, they're part of the Jefferson County School District. Charter schools are.
They are?
But yeah, but they're managed separately.
Well, I
Yeah.
know they get taxpayer money.
Yeah, they get funding, on a different structure, I believe, but yeah, they're part of the district.
They're state funded and their funding is funneled through the school board. And whether they lease the space or own the space is dependent upon the school. So some schools do actually own their own buildings and then some lease from the district.
Because their teachers don't need to be certified.
They don't follow.
How's that follow Jefferson County schools?
State. The money goes directly from the state through Jeffco right into the schools. Jeffco has very little say in how they're managed.
So some of these empty schools could become charter schools?
Yes.
That's why we're having an issue with neighborhood schools, students going to charter schools, closing other schools, things like that, you know,
Well, in Colorado, as you know, is open enrollment, so.
choice.
Choice, so that's.
That's
I
it.
think makes it
That's
difficult on neighborhood schools also.
The thing,
Yep.
right there.
All right, any further discussion? Counselor Stites?
Just one more thing, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Patrick, in your conversations with the superintendent and whoever else at the district, is there anything else as a city we need to be doing to update them on what's going on? So that they didn't seem to know what was going on in Wheat Ridge back in September, so.
Yeah, well, Lauren and Ally and myself met with them, their management team, a couple months ago, and gave them an updated list of developments in the city, which, yeah, I don't think they have the current developments. I don't think what we provided them would have changed anything on school enrollments, but I'm gonna provide them this memo that we provided to you all and make sure that they understand some of these joint use agreements we currently have and what our zoning rules are in Wheat Ridge, so that they maybe factor that into their presentations to the community so that they're not confusing people.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, just, if you're having those conversations, just let them know, like, we as a council, we as a government want to be involved as much as we
Yeah.
can.
Oh, they know that.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure they do now.
They know that.
All right. Good. Counselor Rome?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one last question. So, once the schools have been vacated, there's no students, they've closed the school, whose responsibility is it, because there won't be anybody there for, I guess I'd say policing the parking lots? Like, is that just up to the neighbors in the city to?
They told me at my last meeting, I'm not sure if I can get this 100% right, but they're still going to maintain the funding that's necessary for these closed schools for security and maintenance. So they'll still have the resources for that. You know, will it be like it is today when it's day to day? Probably not, but they said they're still going to have those resources available for those purposes.
Counselor Hulteen?
Sorry, one more to that end. I know both Clarkstrand and Wilmore Davis are used by the community for the fields and the playgrounds and stuff like that. Are those, I know the GOCO requires that to remain accessible to the community, but are they going to still allow neighbors, like, keep those properties accessible? Because I would definitely advocate for that, because I know, Wilmore Davis, it's actually a little bit of a park desert over there. And it is the green space that neighborhood has access to play in. And so if one thing that to proactively ask for is to advocate that if they're going to be maintaining their properties, is that they keep them available and accessible for the community.
Yeah, and obviously any properties where there's some type of agreement with the city, they're going to have to maintain that. The ones that we don't have access to, yeah, we can check into that. I believe they did with Martinson, if I remember, when it closed. The neighborhood was still using that park, but I think it started to run down, so they finally closed it.
There wasn't much grass left.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Nosler-Beck?
Thanks. So one, this conversation has been really enlightening, and I appreciate all of it. And I'm glad to hear that the conversations are happening with the school district, and those lines of communication are open. And just, to the staff, if there's anything that we can do as a council, or I can do to help with communicating some of those needs, I'm happy to be supportive. One thing that I think we can do, just as a council, is these feeder schools are all like, it's happening. Open enrollment begins in December, and people are thinking about how their kids are going to get to school. And one thing that I'm really hopeful we can talk about sooner than later, and it sounds like with the passage of the budget tonight, we have that funding for safe crossings, and really focusing on that. But I do think that we need a robust plan for how we're going to be educating the families and the neighborhoods about how they access these schools. And we should do it sooner than later, because the worst case scenario is that people decide not to cross from Wilmar Davis over to Stevens into that neighborhood, and we don't have the enrollment to keep that school open. And so anything we can do to encourage people to go to their schools, anything the city can do, I think that the transportation and safe crossings is just so important in all of that. And so I'm just asking that we keep that in mind and get working on it as soon as we can.
And we are, as Lauren mentioned, that Maria, our Public Works Director, has already started that, looking at those two neighborhoods to, it'll take a little bit, but to figure out what the different routes might look like.
Well, and I think maybe, Patrick, what I'm getting at is how we do some outreach once some of those options are out there, or even just letting the schools, like letting Color Strand and Wilmore and stuff know that this is in the works, would really help out families that we're working on it. Because right now it doesn't feel, just people aren't, I'm sure they're not assuming the worst, but they're questioning it. It's almost like over communicating it. And I'm happy to, do that at Wilmore and communicate that. But if there's anything we can share, it'd be great.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? It was a great discussion on this item. So, all right. We'll go into item number 2, staff reports. Mr. Goff.
Nothing else this evening, thank you.
Okay. I want to start with elected officials' reports with our clerk, who I apologize to because I skipped you on the last round.
Not a problem. I'm hiding over here. Just an endorsement of what Councilmember Holmes said about Esther's Restaurant that opened recently at Gold's Marketplace. Any evening you can't get into the West 29th Street restaurant because it's too busy, travel on down 32nd Avenue to Gold's Marketplace and patronize them. They are a good operation. They have several sites around the city, and they are an excellent pizza place, sports bar, whatever you want to call it. I highly recommend it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just made me hungry. I was wondering about dinner. Any other elected officials' reports? Anything else to come before this special study session before we adjourn? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you.